Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned to talk about reading projects. My reading projects, the reading projects I have going on here at the stateliest of stately manors. So Roger has expressed a concern. Roger is concerned that I possibly have too many reading projects going on at one time. He thinks it's unrealistic. That's right, the undead mummy thinks my reading projects are unrealistic. Now, his concerns have been echoed by some viewers of this ridiculous channel. Some viewers have said, "Hey Mike, what the hell? Every time I turn around, you've got some new reading project going on. Are you insane?" Possibly. But I think, first of all, I think you ought to have more faith in me, Roger. I mean, I'm the one that raised you from the dead in the first place. But I think I have a handle on all this stuff. I've got a system now. I mean, I know I've had plans and systems in the past that have all come crashing down into catastrophe. But this time, I'm pretty sure I've got it all worked out. A master plan. So, really, what can possibly go wrong? So my reading projects, let's go over them and how I'm going to do them going forward. I've got it all worked out now. So, I've got a lot going on, this is true. And so does Roger. The first thing I should mention, is Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. I'm just going to throw out there Roger's Cheap Old Book Club at the beginning of the video because this is something that we are doing every single month. No matter what else I'm reading, no matter what month it is, whether it's some crazy event like the fabulous June on the Range or Garbogust or whatever month it is, I'm going to be reading one of these books for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. For June, it's going to be this one, The Lone Star Ranger from Zane Grey. Just happens to coincide with June on the Range perfectly. I don't know how we worked that out, but somehow we did. So Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, every month, Roger and I will read a book that Roger has picked out. And they're really cheap. They are all in the public domain, so you can get a copy off Project Gutenberg for absolutely nothing and read along. If you're interested in reading along with Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, that would be awesome. You could join us on Discord. We've got a dopey Discord. I'll leave the channel below where people talk about the books we're reading for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club and a bunch of other stuff. Or you could just comment on the videos or whatever way you want to do it. But, join us for the Lone Star Ranger in June. And that brings me to reading events. Now, reading events are something I'm going to be doing a lot in the next few months. June, July, and August all have reading events that I'll be taking part in. I don't think I'm going to be taking part in any reading events after August, though. After that, I'm just going to be keeping up with the other projects I'll be talking about. But, for June on the Range is a reading event I created to celebrate Western fiction. So, going to be reading a lot of Westerns in June. And then in July, BookTube at War, a reading event created by viewer DDB. And so, this is a reading event where we are going to be reading both nonfiction and fiction books about war. So I will be reading a book or two for BookTube at War. And then, in August, the greatest reading event of all time, Garbogust, created by Criminali, is showing up on the scene where we read trashy books. Trashy books. Books that have been deemed by society to be trash. I got a lot of trashy books lined up to read for August. So I've got all of that going on for these reading events. But I do have regular reading events that I'm going to be keeping up with during the next few months and definitely afterwards. So I've got I've got seven. I've got 7 reading events that are going on right now. The first one is sort of separate from the others because it's about comic books. And you might have heard me mention the world's finest challenge, the world's finest challenge, where I have challenged myself to read Superman and Batman comics every single day of my life, no matter what is going on in my life, no matter what kind of important things claim my attention. Of course, the most important thing is to read comic books, Superman and Batman comic books specifically. So I've been doing this for a few months now or something. I'll have to check how long I've been doing this. It's been a little bit, for Superman at least. I changed it from the Superman challenge to the world's finest challenge. So now I'm reading Superman and Batman every day. It's been fantastic. I have to say, this has been one of the most enjoyable things that I've done since I've gotten on BookTube. Reading Superman and Batman every day, you should all do it. It's fantastic. It's the best. It's the best thing. I love these characters. Always loved Superman. He is my favorite superhero of all time. But I'm really enjoying the Batman stuff I've been reading. So, yeah, the world's finest challenge. This is going to continue throughout everything else that is going on. Now, I do have a few other things that I'm juggling. I'm not actually a really good juggler, but we'll see how I do on these reading events. So I'm not going to, I swear, Roger, I swear, no more reading events except for these. So these are the ones I'm going to concentrate on for the next who knows how long it's going to take. Because also at the same time, the 500 book challenge is going on, where I'm reading 500 books that I own before I will buy any new ones. And so I haven't purchased a book in a while, because I'm on the 500 book challenge. Fortunately, I am uniquely set for this event because I've been buying books for over 40 years. So I've been buying books, a lot of books, a lot. I've bought a lot of books a lot. And so I'm very well set for books. I mean, I've got a lot of books. Certainly enough to do all of these challenges and all of these reading events and, all of the reading projects that I've got going on. I'm set for all of this. So the 500 book challenge, I should say, the 500 book challenge, that's going to be going on forever, but I'm pretty much set with it. So what reading projects, see, I get myself confused, right? What reading projects do I have going forward? So I have 6 main projects other than the stuff I've just been talking about for 8 minutes. I've got 6 main projects going on right now. And I'm going to make them all equal. Up to this point, one project has been dominating the others, but from now on, I'm going to make them equal because I want to do all of these. The first one on my list is classic horror, the classic horror project. I'm doing this specifically, not just because I want to revisit a lot of these books and authors, but because I want to revisit them so that I can make a series of videos, the essential classic horror series of videos, where I talk about the essential classic horror books. And I wanted to do those videos after having read the books recently. I've done videos on a lot of these books before, but usually there's been a lot of time in between the time I read them and the time I made the video. And particularly for the book I read recently for the classic horror project, this one, Frankenstein, I've read this a few times in my life. It's one of my favorite books. But reading it recently, I got something different out of it this time. And so the video that I'll be making for the essential horror books, it's going to be different. I have some different thoughts on this book. And so Frankenstein, the book I recently read for the Classic Horror Project, will be my first video that I'll have up sometime in June, probably. Probably I'll make that video sometime in June, and it'll be the first video for the project. So, yeah, Frankenstein, the 1818 text, which is what this is. was the book I just read for the Classic Horror Project. The next book I'm going to read, you could probably guess exactly which book is going to be the next one. Yeah, you were right. You guessed correctly. It's going to be Dracula. Of course, if Frankenstein's the first book, Dracula has to be the second book for the project. It is certainly essential. I don't think anyone could argue with that. So the next one's going to be Dracula. This is my favorite copy of Dracula. This is the first copy of Dracula I ever read, this edition here, with this awesome, awesome cover. This is the Signet Classics, a vintage, I guess at this point, Signet Classics edition of Dracula. This was actually the first adult book that I ever read, was this book right here. The first book written for adults, that is to say. Dracula by Bram Stoker. So this is the next one I'll be reading for the Classic Horror Project. The next one on my list is the project that has been dominating everything in my reading, which is the Edgar Rice Burroughs Deep Dive. The Edgar Rice Burroughs Deep Dive. Now, originally, I thought I was going to read all of the Edgar Rice Burroughs books in a row. And if I were not on BookTube, that's something I probably would have done. But then I was like, well, I'll make it every other book. And now it's just part of this cycle of books that I'm reading for this project. This is the last book I read for the Edgar Rice Burroughs Deep Dive. This was The Man-Eater, which was very short. This is the last book I read for that. This is going to be the next book that I read for that, The Lost Continent by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Love this Frank Frazetta cover. And so, yeah, so this is going to be one of the 6. I'm going to read them in this order. Classic Horror, then Edgar Rice Burroughs, and then the next project, project number 3, is going to be the Pulp Fiction Project, which I am just now reading the first book in this project. I decided to pick up The Shadow, The Living Shadow. This is the first Shadow novel written by Walter Gibson under the pen name of Maxwell Grant. This is from the series of paperback books that was published by Pyramid. It was Pyramid, that's right. Back in the 70s, I believe these were published. Yeah, back in the 70s. They published this line of books with these great Steranko covers. But I've got a lot of Shadow novels aside from just this paperback line. I've got a bunch of the Shadow novels. So this is for the Pulp Adventure Project I've got going on, where I'll be reading a bunch of pulp adventure books and pulp hero books. And this is the first one. And I'm almost finished with this. I will finish this tomorrow. And then the next one I'm reading for that project will probably be this one. It's probably going to be Doc Savage, The Meteor Menace. The Meteor Menace. This was from a very popular line of reprints back in the 60s and 70s. Great covers on these old paperback books. Again, I have a lot from this series. I also have some other different editions of Doc Savage. I've got a bunch of Doc Savage. So I will be reading Doc Savage as part of the Pulp Adventure Project, and this is the next one that I will be reading probably for that project. But wait, there's more. There's more. There's also the Star Trek Chronicles. The Star Trek Chronicles, which I'll be doing after the Pulp Fiction. So this is the project where I am reading... Excuse this fellow rolling garbage cans around. I don't know why that guy's out there on the manor rolling garbage cans around. Boy, they'll let anybody into this place. So, where was I? Oh yes, the Star Trek Chronicles. Before that guy started rolling garbage cans around. Anyway, the Star Trek Chronicles is a project which I talked about the other day, inspired by Book Trek, a great reading event that's going to be going on all summer, created by Vin at Revenant Reads, where we read Star Trek books. So I've decided, because I'm such a genius here, I decided, hey, wouldn't it be a good idea to read every Star Trek book I own in publication order? I have a lot of Star Trek books. I have a lot. I mentioned this the other day, that I ordered a bunch of lots, well, not a bunch, maybe a few, lots of books from eBay of Star Trek books. And I've got I never even opened some of the boxes. I know what they are. Actually, I don't, because, maybe I just think they're Star Trek books. They could have sent me anything. There could be anything in those boxes. I never bothered to open them. Anyway, I've got a lot of Star Trek books, probably. And then Steve Donahue sent me a bunch of Star Trek books, which was awesome. Thanks again for that, Steve. That was really, really cool of you. So I'm pretty well set for that project. The first book is the first book that was ever published for Star Trek, and that's this one. This is Star Trek by James Blish. This was published in 1967 while the television show was still on. It has a great cover. This is a set of novelized episodes, so episodes that have been turned into short stories written by science fiction writer James Blish. This is what I'm going to be reading right after I finish The Shadow. I'll be moving right into the Star Trek project. That's the first book I'm going to be reading. This is the second book I'm going to be reading. This is Star Trek 2, of course. That's going to be the next one. Another book by James Blish. So I've got the Star Trek Chronicles going on. I just made a video about the Star Trek Chronicles. You can check it out if you want. And after that is the Vintage Science Fiction Project. I have a ton of vintage science fiction books. This was the last one I read, which also happened to be a choice of from Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. The Forgotten Planet by Murray Leinster. I always want to call him Murray for some reason. It's Murray Leinster. The Forgotten Planet was a lot of fun, and this is the last vintage science fiction book I read. This is probably going to be the next one. This is Adventures on Other Planets, edited by Donald A. Walheim. This has been sitting over there for a while, saying, read me finally. So, yeah, I'll be reading this as part of the Vintage Science Fiction Project. The project where I'm going to try to read every vintage science fiction book I own before I die. And that's a lot. I have hundreds and hundreds of vintage science fiction books. Mostly paperbacks, but I do have some hardcovers as well. I made some videos on my Vintage Science Fiction Project already, but I haven't read nearly as many as I need to if I'm going to be reading them all before I croak. So this is project number 5. This is project number 5. Now, project number 6 is actually one of the earliest projects I took on here, and that is the Reading Every Book by Stephen King. The Reading Every Book by Stephen King. This is the last book I read, Cycle of the Werewolf. I actually took like a 6-month break from reading Stephen King books. I kind of did it by accident. It wasn't intentional. But yeah, I took like a 6-month break. So I'm behind from where I should be. So this is the last book I read, which I read for Horror Mayhem. Cycle of the Werewolf. This was a lot of fun. The next book I'm going to be reading is The Talisman. This is the next one on the list by both Stephen King and Peter Straub. I am reading these in publication order, the Stephen King books, and this is the next one on the list. It is big. So I don't actually know. Maybe I'm going to skip this one in the cycle, but I really don't feel like I want to do that. We'll see. It depends where this lands, because I've just got, this is a big book to land during a month like August or something, where I have a bunch of other books to read. We'll see how that works out. But this is an important project, because like I said, the Read Every Book by Stephen King is one of the first projects I took on this channel. I took on the Read Every Book by challenge, and I had a bunch of authors that viewers suggested. I spun a wheel. It landed on Stephen King. And Stephen King is still writing books, and he's written a gazillion books. So this is a project that'll be going on until I'm 90, probably. It'll probably go on past whenever this BookTube channel finishes. So will this BookTube channel ever finish? I don't know. It depends how long YouTube lasts. I'll probably be on YouTube as long as YouTube lasts, or as long as I last. One of those things. So yeah, this is the final project. The Stephen King project, the Reading Every Book by Stephen King project. So those are all the projects and the reading events and all of that. So that's everything, I think. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. There is a project about reading books by booktubers. Where's David Wiley's book? His was the next book, but I don't think I'm going to be able to put that in the cycle. I'm going to be doing that whenever I get the chance. But I am going to be continuing to read books by booktubers whenever I get the opportunity. And David Wiley's book was next, and I don't know where I put it. Did I put it over there? I don't know. Now I have to find David Wiley's book. Man, I'm always losing stuff around here. It's the Phantom of the Library. The evil Phantom of the Library, who stalks the dark halls of stately Vaughan Manor, steals my books and puts them in odd places. He's been haunting this place ever since the channel began, stealing my books. Damn you, Phantom of the Library! Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, that's everything, I think. And I think that's how I'm going to be doing it. Yeah, see, I've got it all under control. It's all under control here at stately Vaughan Manor. Trust me. I will catch you next time.